Welcome to the Timeless Talents channel. In this video, I'll be highlighting some of the most irresistible Hollywood mothers and their stunning sons. Let's dive in, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Megan Fox, 39 years old, and Noah Shannon Green, 13 years old. Victoria Beckham, 51 years old, and Romeo James Beckham, 22 years old. Catherine Keener, 66 years old, and Clyde Keener, 26 years old. Naomi Watts, 56 years old, and Sasha Schreiber, 17 years old. Jennifer Lopez, 55 years old, and Max Muniz, 17 years old. Elizabeth Hurley, 60 years old, and Damian Hurley, 23 years old. Marcia Gay Harden, 65 years old, and Hudson Harden, 21 years old. Kelly Preston passed away in 2020 at the age of 57, and Jet Travolta passed away in 2009 at the age of 16. Julia Roberts, 57 years old, and Henry Motter, 18 years old. Kate Hudson, 46 years old, and Bingham Bellamy, 12 years old. Madonna, 66 years old, and David Banda, 19 years old. Rachel Hunter, 55 years old, and Liam Stewart, 30 years old. Megan Fox, 39 years old, and Bodie Ransom Green, 11 years old. Victoria Beckham, 51 years old, and Cruz Beckham, 20 years old. Tori Spelling, 52 years old, and Liam Aaron McDermott, 18 years old. Rosie O'Donnell, 63 years old, and Parker Jaron O'Donnell, 30 years old. Nia Long, 54 years old, and Masai Zavago Dorsey II, 24 years old. Helena Christensen, 56 years old, and Mingus Lucien Riedas, 25 years old. Pamela Anderson, 58 years old, and Brandon Thomas Lee, 29 years old. Kelly Preston passed away in 2020 at the age of 57, and Benjamin Travolta, 14 years old. Meg Ryan, 63 years old, and Jack Quaid, 33 years old. Julianne Moore, 64 years old, and Caleb Frundlish, 27 years old. Cindy Crawford, 59 years old, and Presley Gerber, 26 years old. Deborah Messing, 56 years old, and Roman Walker Zellman, 21 years old. Megan Fox, 39 years old, and Journey River Green, 7 years old. Patricia Arquette, 57 years old, and Enzo Rossi, 36 years old. Tori Spelling, 52 years old, and Finn McDermott, 13 years old. Mariska Hargitay, 61 years old, and August Herman, 19 years old. Nia Long, 54 years old, and Kez Sunday Udoka, 14 years old. Minnie Driver, 55 years old, and Henry Story Driver, 16 years old. Pamela Anderson, 58 years old, and Dylan Jagger Lee, 27 years old. Michelle Pfeiffer, 67 years old, and John Henry Kelly, 31 years old. Jada Pinkett Smith, 53 years old, and Jaden Smith, 27 years old. Jennifer Garner, 53 years old, and Samuel Affleck, 13 years old. Kris Jenner, 69 years old, and Rob Kardashian, 38 years old. Kate Winslet, 49 years old, and Joe Anders, 21 years old. Phoebe Cates, 62 years old, and Owen Klein, 33 years old. Tori Spelling, 52 years old, and Bo Dean McDermott, 8 years old. Alyssa Milano, 52 years old, and Milo Thomas Bugliari, 13 years old. Jennifer Connelly, 54 years old, and Stellan Bettany, 21 years old. Mary Louise Parker, 61 years old, and William Atticus Parker, 21 years old. Christy Brinkley, 71 years old, and Jack Paris Brinkley Cook, 30 years old. Gina Davis, 69 years old, and Keon William Jarahi, 21 years old. Gwyneth Paltrow, 52 years old, and Moses Martin, 19 years old. Halle Berry, 58 years old, and Makeo Martinez, 10 years old. Vanessa Paradis, 52 years old, and Jack Depp, 23 years old. Angelina Jolie, 50 years old, and Maddox, 23 years old. Jessica Biel, 43 years old, and Silas Timberlake, 10 years old. Linda Hamilton, 68 years old, and Dalton Abbott, 35 years old. Christina Aguilera, 44 years old, and Max Liren Brotman, 17 years old. Hilary Duff, 37 years old, and Luca Cruz Comrie, 13 years old. Jennifer Connelly, 54 years old, and Kai Dugan, 28 years old. Sharon Stone, 67 years old, and Rowan Braunstein, 25 years old. Lisa Bonet, 57 years old, and Nakoa Wolf-Momoa, 16 years old. T. Leone, 59 years old, and Kid Miller Duchovny, 23 years old. Meryl Streep, 76 years old, and Henry Wolf, 45 years old. Nicole Kidman, 58 years old, and Connor Cruz, 30 years old. Uma Thurman, 55 years old, and Levon Hawke, 23 years old. Reese Witherspoon, 49 years old, and Deacon Reese Felipe, 21 years old. Shakira, 48 years old, and Milan Peak Mubarak, 12 years old. Sofia Vergara, 53 years old, and Manolo Gonzalez Vergara, 33 years old. Victoria Beckham, 51 years old, and Brooklyn Beckham, 26 years old. Anna Faris, 48 years old, and Jack Pratt, 13 years old. Catherine Zeta-Jones, 55 years old, and Dylan Douglas, 24 years old. Jessica Alba, 44 years old, and Hayes Alba Warren, 7 years old. Isabella Rossellini, 73 years old, and Roberto Rossellini, 32 years old. Robin Wright, 59 years old, and Hopper Penn, 31 years old. Susan Sarandon, 78 years old, and Miles Robbins, 33 years old. Sandra Bullock, 60 years old, and Louis Bardo Bullock, 15 years old. Kate Hudson, 46 years old, and Ryder Robinson, 21 years old. Madonna, 66 years old, and Rocco Ritchie, 24 years old.